Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I am your host, Tiffany Daniels. And again, folks, we are still on the JRC. We are still going over the FDA Executive Summary for April the 24th, 2014. Remember, this is a 126-page document. So we're going to be going over this for a minute. Now, disclaimer, some of the things we will be discussing during this video, may be disturbing. So please, if you have any children, please make sure they go into the other room, what have you. And folks, we will be making sure to go ahead and include the link to this document in the description as always, as well as a link to the petition to shut down the Judge Rotenberg Center. We're also going to go over a video today, which is actually an extended interview done by CBS in regards to a couple of parents whose son, Roger, is at JRC. So let's get back to where we were yesterday. So we stopped right here, right before we got into behavioral, which is 4.2.2. Behavioral etiologies of SIB, which is self-injurious behaviors, and aggressive behavior suggests that these behaviors may be learned via apparent behavior principles and maintained by positive social reinforcement, but may also be motivated by negative reinforcement, in which behavior is maintained or strengthened by the removal of an aversive stimulus. Finally, self-injury may be reinforced by sensory stimulation. Wise, 2002. According to Wise, 2002, the more common behavioral etiologies of SIB and aggressive behavior include environmental contingencies. This concept suggests that SIB and aggressive behavior is shaped by a variety of environmental contingencies, such as the need to escape a stressful situation, which may explain how problem behaviors are maintained. A functional analysis of behavior can identify the relationship between environmental events and behavior and can thus accumulate information to describe the nature of self-injury. So basically saying something stresses you out, looking for an escape to that stress, maybe the person might self-injure in some way. Moving on. Not sure how I feel about that because I remember quite a bit from when I was younger, but I don't really remember a whole lot in regards to the motivation of it. I had a lot of self-loathing as a child that would manifest itself out with the head banging into the floor. So, kind of different reasons as to why I engaged in that behavior. Okay. 4.2.2.2 Positive Reinforcement Hypothesis. The positive reinforcement explanation can be delineated into two broad classes of reinforcers: attention and increased access to desirables. Mace et al., 1994. Attention refers to social consequences of displaying self-injury, ranging from mild to severe reprimands, social disapproval, and from sympathetic concern to physical consolation. When self-injury results in increased attention, it's positively reinforced by serving to produce social interactions that may seldom occur otherwise for some individuals with developmental disabilities, given their limited adaptive behaviors and communicative repertoires. Okay. So their idea is that when they engage in self-injury and it gets a positive response from their peers for whatever reason, this is weird. Okay, so what you're telling me that if I'm self-harming myself, I'm like ripping my skin off, and people are responding positively, yay, that I'm more likely to engage in it. What person responds positively to someone that's harming themselves? Maybe it's just me. I know it's a sick world we all live in, but anyways, moving on. Okay. Increased access to desirables refers to self-injury used to obtain desired tangibles or activities. It has been hypothesized that unresponsive environments and inability to communicate requests appropriately may promote increasingly problematic behaviors. Carr Durand, 1985. For instance, an individual may request something, not receive it, then engage in self-injurious behavior. Additionally, the behavior may be reinforced positively if the individual should, on occasion, receive desired object or event. A survey by Maisto et al. 1978 reported that 33% of the clients engaged in self-injury because they wanted something. Now, with autism, you gotta realize there's also a communication problem there. Remember how I keep drilling into your head? Behavior is communication. They're not necessarily, like they're hypothesizing here, engaging a behavior just to get what they want. That they've been told no. No, that's not what's going on. Generally, from my experience, what's going on is they're trying to communicate what they want. The regular neurotypical person is not understanding it because, by and large, they do not understand the way that a lot of autistics communicate, and self-injurious behavior can just come out of an extreme level of frustration. So, just wanted to mention that. Negative reinforcement hypothesis 4.2.2.3. Negative reinforcement hypothesis. According to negative reinforcement hypothesis, SIB, aggressive behavior, is used as either escape or avoidance responses which are maintained by the delay, removal, attenuation of an aversive stimulus. A consistent finding in literature has been that the higher rates of SIB are displayed during the most difficult conditions. Carr, Newson, and Bankoff, 1980, Mace, Bowder, and Lynn, 1987, Weeks and Gaylord Ross, 1981. Some individuals engage in self-energy to avoid or escape an aversive social encounter. Edelson et al., 1983. The individual may engage in self-injury just prior to the social interaction, and thus he or she may avoid the social interaction before it begins. Alternatively, the individual may engage in self-injury to escape or terminate a social encounter that has already begun. For example, a caretaker may ask a client to do something, to leave the play area, and if the person does not want to comply, he or she may then engage in self-injury. As a consequence, the caretaker's initial request is dropped or forgotten, and the caretaker's attention is then directed at stopping the behavior. They think we're so simple-minded. God, this FDA. No, it's not that deep, okay? It's not that deep. Let me explain it to you, okay? Okay? God. Okay, so we are not going to harm ourselves just because we want to stay on the playground and avoid dealing with other children. Okay? Now, we might harm ourselves out of frustration as to having to deal with the other children. Sure. But what they get wrong here is the motivation. Like, they're making it out like we're acting like a spoiled toddler. That's not the case. That is not what's going on. What they're getting wrong is the thought process. Okay? We're not trying to get out of anything. Okay? That's not what that is about. It's not, I'm going to do this so I can get what I want. It's not that deep. It comes out of pure frustration. I have to go back into that hellhole of sensory freaking nightmare with all those other young kids, with all their little noises, and the moving chairs, and the nails on chalkboard freaking desk moving across the floor with its metal. It's frustrating. And depending on where you are on the spectrum that particular day, it can be physically extremely painful. So, might do it either to take your mind off of the fact that your head wants to explode due to oversensory issues, or it might be you're just clawing at yourself purely out of frustration. Don't tell me you've never got so mad that you haven't dug your nails into your fist and drew blood before, because I call bullshit. Major bullshit on that. Okay, moving on. 4.2.2.4 Self-Stimulation Hypothesis. The self-stimulation hypothesis is proposed to account for SIB that seems to occur without observable environmental contingencies. Mace et al. 1994. In this case, self-injury is interpreted as providing self-induced stimulation of the senses and develops into both sensory and social reinforcement. Edelson, 1984. So they're talking about, for me, and it's not really self-injurious behavior, it's this. Stimming. For individuals with intellectual disabilities, SIB may be more common in environments, often institutions, with insufficient stimulation. Furthermore, anecdotal reports, case studies, and neuropsychological models have suggested that individuals with autism are characterized by a dysfunctional modulation. Oh my God, the terms they use. Dysfunctional modulation of the sensory modalities, resulting in either hypo or hypersensitivity to stimulation. That's my problem. I got the hypersensitivity. O'Neill and Jones, 1997, Ornitz and Repo, 1976. Self-injury as a form of self-stimulation, or stimming, coincides with the idea that repetitive stereotype movements, body rocking, hand flapping, provide an under-aroused individuals with stimulation. In direct contrast, self-injury has been also suggested to attenuate the effects of over-arousing stimuli. Again, they get it wrong. Oh my God, talk to an autist. This is why we hate researchers. If you're not autistic and a researcher, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. Okay. Body rocking. Hand flapping. First of all, not self-injurious. Second of all, it has nothing to do with arousal stimuli at all. What crack are you smoking? Number 3, it's not necessarily to self-stimulate at all. At all. It is a regulating sort of thing, okay? It helps us self-regulate. All right? We live in your neurotypical world that is not built for us. You have oversensory everywhere. Some of your food you all do is painful. We do things like hand flapping, like my twist the hands with the ponytailers. We're doing this to self-regulate. It's like a rhythmic motion. It is something to make you calm. You're not trying to stimulate yourself. You're trying to get yourself calm. Okay? Please do not compare stimming, the body rocking, and hand flapping to self-injurious behavior. It is not the same thing, not even a little bit. So, just wanted to interject that into there. Number 2, in regards to self-injury in order to self-stimulate. I can see that depending on the person. There are completely so-called normal neurotypicals who might engage in a sort of SIB situation as long as it was controlled and safe in regards to stimulating themselves. Sure. Just please don't compare body rocking, hand flapping, or me twisting my hair ties on my hands to that. They're not the same thing. Moving on. 4.2.25 Communication. Communication problems have often been associated with self-injurious behavior. If a person has poor receptive and or poor expressive language skills, this may lead to frustration, escalate into self-injury, notably when the individual is trying to obtain desirable tangibles or activities. This is what I was talking for before. It's out of frustration. At least I got it in there somewhere. This is why we need more autistic people in research. I'm just saying. The inconsistencies there. But anyways, so I've covered everything that I wanted to really cover here. Let's do a little bit of a recap over the things we just covered, and then we'll go ahead and go take a look at that interview. As always, I can't promise I won't rant, because I'm sitting through it this time. Okay, so we went over behavioral etiologies of self-injurious behavior and aggressive behavior. We went over environmental contingencies, which is the concept that SIB and aggressive behavior is shaped by a variety of environmental contingencies, such as the need to escape from a stressful situation. We also went over the positive reinforcement hypothesis, this idea that if the person is self-harming and gets a positive response for their peers, they're more likely to continue into behavior. I don't even know how this is a thing, because you're a pretty sick human being if you give visual encouragement to someone who's engaging in self-harm, but there you are. We also went over negative reinforcement hypothesis, basically that SIB, aggressive behavior, is used as an escape or an avoidance response. And we kind of went over some of the BS ideas that they had in regards to that. I won't go over all that again. We went over the self-stimulation process and exactly what was wrong with the way that they worded things. Body rocking, hand flapping, me twisting my ponytails on my hands is not the same thing as self-injurious behavior, and self-injurious behavior is not a stim. Stims are things like hand flapping, hand twisting, body rocking that is used to self-regulate and keep us calm. Self-injurious behavior usually comes out of a person being extremely obsessed, extremely frustrated. We also went over the fact that, boom, right there, it states communication problems are often associated with self-injurious behavior. And they blame it on us, of course. Poor receptive and or not expressive enough language skills. Maybe you should learn our language, just saying. I would love to live in a world where autistic people are not forced to mask ourselves to the point that we are not even any longer ourselves in order for other people to accept us. I would love to live in a world where one day people would start meeting us halfway and start learning how we communicate and how we interact. Because the fact of the matter is, folks, when you get a room of autistics together, we communicate with each other perfectly fine. Just saying. But anyways, moving on from that, guys, we are going to go ahead and watch that extended CBS interview with Roger and Sharon Wood. I'm going to try not to rant. I don't want to make this a long video today, so let's go ahead and get it going here.
So tell me about your son.
Joshua, he's now 20. He'll be 21. We learned of his autism at age 2, and basically from that date, we've pursued every avenue available to help him, to benefit him, to help him to be able to function normally. When he was younger, his behaviors were manageable, and as he got older, they began to escalate and resulted in different placements where he could be helped. But the main thing about Josh is that he's a very loving and warm individual, but he has the behaviors that he can't control. This being here at JRC has helped him to be able to regulate that behavior, to put a boundary to that escalation, so that he can now function happily, go out into public outings, come home, fly and that sort of thing. Before, we couldn't take him to an airport. We couldn't fly with him. I'm able to go home now, fly back and forth between school and home, or to the beach and that sort of thing. But I'm going to add to that.
Yeah, well, some of the behaviors he's talking about are extreme self-injurious behavior and aggression. Things like literally just going after someone, just literally out of the blue, and trying to bite them, grab their hair, knock them down. He has a daughter or a sister a year older than him, and when he was at home, he was manageable until he was a little older, and he went to one of the best day schools for autism in Virginia, and it was wonderful. But when 2:30 came and he came home, and he had behaviors that would come out of the blue from medications or whatever it would be, he would just aggress. So my daughter, ourselves, we would lock ourselves in the bedroom and just hope that Josh wouldn't hurt himself.
You would lock yourself in the bedroom?
Yes.
Because you thought he was going to hurt you or your daughter?
Yes. I mean, he would just go into severe rages that he could not control. He would grab his head and cry, and he would not want to do it, but he couldn't control it. And so we would just pray that he wouldn't run out into the street or break the door down. And it got to the point when he was transported to and from school that he would aggress in the car. And even when we put him in another residential place in Maryland, which was perfect, which was great with ABA, sensory integration, the best therapies there, on the way home for home visits, he would just attack in the car, where the police would have to come pin him down. 5 people would have to pin him down and take him to a hospital and drug him to get him calm.
So when they talk about parents being desperate, I mean, you evidently know exactly what that feels like.
Until you walked in the shoes of the parents with children like this, and Josh is by no means the most extreme example of behaviors here. But from day one, as a parent, you do everything imaginable, unimaginable, whatever. I mean, sometimes you grasp at straws, because from the day you find out about autism, where do you turn? There's not a go-to book, a how-to book. There's not a school that you can just go to.
JRC was the only place that said, we will take him and we will embrace him and we will take him off of those drugs that are, affecting him physically and mentally and emotionally and making him obese and not even being effective. They went through the whole detox process with him, and they were saints. But of course, he was restrained most of the time. But we were fortunately, when the court process went through, which is quite extensive with JRC, you can't just get on the GED. He was, when they authorized it finally for him through the courts in Massachusetts, that changed in him was almost instantaneous. And he has never worn a helmet since in his car for transportation. He has not been restrained one time since. You see him here, he looks like one of the healthiest kids you would ever see. And he's smiling. Physically, they take out blood, they check him, take care of his dental. That was never possible before. So he's like the healthiest kid you would see. But every now and then when he gets these impulses that he can't control, which aren't very often, he either has a GED on him to remind him, I can't do that, or he'll get the 2-second bee sting, which interrupts the process in his brain and stops the behavior.
Right. So from your judgment, from knowing your son for 20 years, when you look at him, you know that he has had the shock, but you look at him and you say, he's okay.
He's a new kid. His eyes are clear. He's smiling.
So we've watched the interview with these parents before, and before I close out, just to remind you, the one thing these parents never say during these parent testimonials for the school is the fact that they always have that person that's 3 feet back with a remote control, with a picture of their son or their daughter or their non-binary on that right there. So, of course, they're going to put on a smile. Of course, they're going to act happy. Of course, they're going to do anything their abusers to tell them to do to avoid being abused. We've seen this in cases of kids who have had child abuse. So, it doesn't excuse it. It doesn't excuse it. And of course, they're going to dress them up, make sure they look all nice and pretty for when the parents come to visit. They don't want the parents to know what goes on behind closed doors. So, we'll be getting into more of that, but that's all I got for right now. Now, we don't get very many views on this channel, folks, especially for these videos. The few that we do get do tend sometimes to get removed every now and then. So please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe. Please don't forget to hit the comments. I do appreciate your time this afternoon. And as always, folks, we here at Spilling Tea do hope you have a good one. Bye-bye.